Chapter 2. The Things That Never Die. The first thing people should understand about men like Kong is that they never truly leave violence behind. They can disappear from the world that created them. They can bury old names beneath new ones. They can trade guns for flowers. Learn how to smile softer. Learn how to exist without blood on their hands. But somewhere deep inside them, there is always a part that still belongs to the darkness. A locked room, a silent hallway filled with ghosts. And sometimes, in the middle of perfectly peaceful days, that door creaks open again. The town by the sea felt unreal when we first arrived there. Too quiet, too gentle. The air smelled like salt instead of smoke. The nights were filled with waves instead of sirens. No black cars waiting outside the house. No hidden weapons beneath dinner tables. No men watching from shadows with one hand inside their jackets. For the first few months, I kept expecting someone to kick down the door. Trauma is strange like that. Even after surviving hell, your body never fully understands that the war is over. Kong noticed it before I did. Every night before bed, he checked every window in the house. Twice. Every sound outside made his eyes sharpen automatically. Every unfamiliar face in town stayed in his memory. Sometimes I would catch him standing still in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, holding a glass of water, staring at nothing, like part of him was listening for danger that never came. And yet, he tried so hard to give me a normal life. That was the heartbreaking thing about Kong. No matter how violent his past was, there was still something painfully gentle buried inside him. Our flower shop sat at the end of a narrow hill overlooking the ocean. It wasn't much. A small white building with ivy climbing the walls, wooden shelves near the windows, and tiny bells above the front door that chimed whenever customers walked in. Kong built most of it himself. I still remember watching him paint the walls during our first summer there. Black hair falling into his eyes, white paint staining his arms. For the first time since I had known him, he looked peaceful. Not happy. I don't think men like Kong know how to become happy completely, but peaceful, like someone who had finally stopped running long enough to breathe. The women in town adored him. Older ladies would come into the shop pretending to need flowers, only to spend 20 minutes talking to him about weather, gardening, or seafood prices at the harbor. They always left smiling. One afternoon, an old woman leaned toward me and whispered playfully, "Your husband looks cold, but he loves you very much." I smiled politely, but inside, my chest tightened. Because she didn't know. She didn't know those same hands arranging roses so carefully had once snapped bones without hesitation. She didn't know he slept facing the bedroom door every night out of instinct. She didn't know that some mornings he woke up drenched in sweat from nightmares he never talked about. People always think monsters look like monsters. They don't. Sometimes they look like exhausted men trying very hard to become human again. Kong rarely slept. That scared me more than anything. There's a specific loneliness in watching someone you love lose battles inside their own head. Some nights I woke up around 3 or 4 in the morning and found the balcony light still on. Kong would be sitting there alone, wearing dark clothes, one arm resting against his knee while the ocean stretched endlessly in front of him. He smoked when he couldn't sleep. Not heavily, just enough to keep his hands busy. Sometimes he didn't even inhale. He only watched the cigarette burn slowly between his fingers like he was punishing himself with time. The first night I joined him outside, the sea wind was freezing. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat beside him without saying anything. For a while, we only listened to the waves. Then quietly, I asked, "What are you thinking about?" Kong stared into the darkness ahead. "I'm trying to get used to surviving tomorrow." At first, I didn't understand the sadness behind those words. Later, I realized people like us were never taught how to imagine a future. In our old world, nobody planned too far ahead. Not vacations, not weddings, not growing old, because death was always nearby. One mistake, one betrayal, one bullet, and everything disappeared. So even after escaping, part of Kong still lived as if every sunrise might be his last. I used to believe time healed people. It doesn't. Time only teaches pain how to sit quietly inside your bones. The scars remain. You just learn how to breathe around them. By late November, rain began falling almost every afternoon. Rain near the ocean was different from rain in the city we came from. It wasn't violent. It didn't smell like gasoline or blood. It was softer somehow, lonelier. The kind of rain that makes memories rise to the surface when you least want them to. That afternoon, the flower shop was empty. I was changing the water in a vase of white tulips when a little boy suddenly ran inside holding a black envelope. "Someone told me to give this to you," he said quickly. "Who?" But he only shook his head and ran away before I could stop him. The second I touched the envelope, something inside me tightened. Matte black paper. No address. No name. Only a silver hawk embossed on the back. My blood turned cold instantly. White hawk. I hadn't seen that symbol in over a year. Not since the city burned. Not since Black Dragon collapsed beneath betrayal and blood. For a moment, I couldn't move. My fingers suddenly felt numb as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Blurry. Taken from far away. But I recognized him immediately. Kong. Standing outside our flower shop yesterday morning, watching the ocean while holding coffee in one hand. Below the photo, someone had written the sentence in black ink: "Monsters shouldn't pretend to live peaceful lives." I stopped breathing, because suddenly, it felt like the past had found us again. And the past never comes back gently. The bell above the front door rang softly. Kong stepped inside carrying groceries from the harbor market. Rainwater darkened his black shirt, and damp strands of hair fell over his forehead. For a second, he looked so normal, just a tired man coming home after buying dinner. Then his eyes landed on the envelope in my hands. Everything changed instantly. I watched his entire body go still. Not dramatic, not loud, just terrifyingly still. Predators freeze before violence. Kong. He walked toward me slowly and took the photograph from my hand. His expression didn't change while reading it. But I noticed something worse. His fingers tightened slightly. That tiny movement was enough to make my stomach drop. Because Kong almost never lost control of himself. "They found us," he said quietly. The calmness in his voice scared me more than shouting ever could. I hated that look in his eyes. I had seen it before. The same cold distance. The same readiness for bloodshed. The man I fell in love with had spent years trying to bury that version of himself. And now I could almost see him dragging it back to the surface. "We need to leave," he said. "No." His gaze snapped toward me immediately. "Not this time. You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." Silence stretched between us. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Kong looked exhausted suddenly. Not physically, soul-deep exhausted. Like a man who knew peace was never meant for him. Finally, he sat down across from me, and for the first time since I had known him, he began talking about the life he came from. When I was younger, he said quietly, I belonged to another organization before Black Dragon. I stayed silent. There was a man who raised me. His eyes lowered toward his hands covered in faint scars. Hands that learned violence long before tenderness. His name was Vu Than. The name alone made my chest tighten. Even my father used to speak carefully when mentioning him. Vu Than wasn't just dangerous. He was the kind of man people feared enough to turn into legend. Smuggler, executioner, ghost. Some believed he built the largest underground network in the North decades ago before disappearing completely. Most people thought he died. But in our world, no body meant no ending. He took me from an orphanage when I was 8. Kong continued. Why? A faint smile appeared on his lips. Not warm, not happy, empty, because I survived. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? There was a fire. His voice remained calm. Most of the children died. Something cold slid down my spine. And you lived. Yeah. He stared out at the rain. Vu Than told me survival was proof that I had value. I suddenly understood something horrifying. Kong had never been raised like a child. He had been raised like something useful. A weapon. He taught me how to shoot when I was 10. Kong said softly. 10. At 10 years old, I was learning piano. Kong was learning how to kill. He taught me fear was weakness. Mercy was weakness. Love was weakness. His eyes darkened slightly. For a long time I believed him. I could barely breathe listening to him. Because the saddest thing about Kong wasn't the violence. It was a fact that nobody had ever taught him he deserved gentleness too. The first man I killed begged me to spare him. He said quietly. My chest tightened. Vu Than told me if I hesitated for 3 seconds the man would kill me instead. His voice never shook. That made it worse somehow. People only speak that calmly about pain they've carried for too long. I walked toward him slowly, then wrapped my arms around him. At first he froze, like he still wasn't used to being held when he was vulnerable. Then finally, his arms closed around me carefully, almost cautiously, like I was the only soft thing left in his world. Kong. Yeah. If you could go back. My voice trembled slightly. Would you choose a different life? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he buried his face lightly against my hair and whispered, there was never another life available to me. That sentence broke my heart more than anything else he had said, because he wasn't mourning who he used to be. He was mourning the person he never got the chance to become. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean. Then suddenly, his phone vibrated against the table. One message. Unknown number. No text. Only a video attachment. Kong opened it. And for the first time in over a year, I saw fear on his face. Real fear. The footage came from the security camera outside our beach house. Timestamp 3:14 a.m. A man stood outside the gate wearing black clothes and a dark cap. Slowly, he lifted his head and looked directly into the camera. Even through the grainy footage, something about him felt deeply wrong. Cold. Controlled. Patient. Then the man raised one hand. In his palm sat an old silver lighter. The moment Kong saw it, all the color drained from his face. His breathing stopped. No, he whispered. I looked at him immediately. Do you know him? For several seconds, he couldn't answer. He only stared at the screen like he was looking at a ghost rising from the dead. Then, finally, in a voice so quiet it almost disappeared beneath the storm, he said, He came back for me.